Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the launch of the minimum standards for the establishment and operation of human milk banks in Southeast Asia. I'm Dr. Chua Mei Chien from KK Human Milk Bank, Singapore. And it is a great honor and pleasure for me to be your host this afternoon. This event is jointly organized by the Regional Human Milk Bank Network of Southeast Asia, together with Alive and Thrive. I'm pleased to inform you that we'll be live streaming this event on the regional network's Facebook page, and the link has been provided in the chat. To begin today's program is Dr. Estrella Husey, President of the Human Milk Bank Association of the Philippines, and she will give us the welcome address.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. May. Fellow Human Milk Bank practitioners, representatives from the governments of countries in Southeast Asia, representatives of non-government and development agencies, health and nutrition advocates, and all of you who are joining us from the different parts of the world. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. On behalf of the Human Milk Bank Network in Southeast Asia, I am pleased to welcome you to the launching of the minimum standards for the establishment and operation of the human milk banks in Southeast Asia. Today is a very special day, and we are happy that you are with us as we introduce our regional human milk banking minimum standards, a document envisioned to serve as an instrument to help provide equitable access to safe donor human milk for all babies in need. Human milk bank services are an essential component of a breastfeeding-friendly health system. They give small and sick babies access to the multiple benefits of breast milk by providing safe donor human milk. To date, there are a total of 37 human milk banks in Southeast Asia, operating in Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. The vision of having a set of standards that will serve as a guide for human milk banking in the region has been with many of us years before. But it was only in the year 2019 when the Human Milk Bank Network in Southeast Asia was formed, after two consultative meetings of the Human Milk Bank representatives in the region held in Ho Chi Minh City and Manila, that this vision started to take shape. The network was established with the mission of supporting breastfeeding and promoting safe human milk banking in the region. Currently, the network has members who are human milk bank experts and practitioners from Indonesia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. Also in 2019, the network set the development of a regional minimum standards among its very first goals. That was more than 2 years ago. Well, it took some time as the COVID-19 pandemic delayed many of our plans and activities. But we are glad that we are here now to introduce the standards to all of you, which we hope will facilitate further development of national, regional, and local recommendations, guidelines, and operating procedures for the safe and sustainable delivery of optimal quality donor human milk to infants throughout the region. The network also envisions that in the future, these standards will form the basis upon which human milk banks in countries in Southeast Asia may be accredited, and the basis on which related national legislations will be developed. We therefore hope that more human milk banks will be established in other Southeast Asian countries who do not have milk banks yet, and in other strategic locations in countries who already have human milk banks. so we can reach every mother and baby in need. On behalf of the network, I would like to express our appreciation to those who have helped in the development of the standards and made this day possible. To the network members and the core technical working group who provided their valuable inputs. To Ms. Gillian Weaver, an esteemed international milk bank specialist and consultant who provided the overall guidance in the drafting and finalization of the standards. And of course, to the Human Milk Bank Association of the Philippines, the HMBAP team, for facilitating the technical consultations, and to Alive and Thrive Southeast Asia for providing strategic, technical, and financial assistance. Thank you to all of you for all your support. Because of you, this day has become possible. Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you, and we wish that this historic day will also inspire many of you to continue supporting efforts on human milk banking and save more lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hussein. And now I'd like to invite Ms. Gillian Weaver, who has been instrumental in the development of this set of minimum standards, to share with us the processes involved. I'm sure Gillian is no stranger to many of you. She's an international milk banking specialist and consultant and past president of the European Milk Bank Association from 2012 to 2015. Gillian, please.
Thank you, and thank you for that kind introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to wherever you are. I feel hugely privileged to have been asked to be involved in the development of these minimum standards for human milk banks in Southeast Asia. And so I'm delighted today to be able to offer this brief insight into their development. If we can move on the slides. Thank you. So the team, as has been described by Dr. Starr from the Philippines, included the Regional Human Milk Bank Network of Southeast Asia. They spearheaded it, but there's been a lot of involvement from the whole team, including the technical and financial assistance from Alive and Thrive. So for the next slide, thank you. Dr. Starr mentioned there are 36 human milk banks in the Southeast Asia network now. And so you can see from this, this map that the numbers are growing, because there certainly aren't 36 on the map there. This map is currently being updated. You can access it from the resource toolkit available from PATH. And the link is on the slide. But the number of milk banks are growing, and so the need for the minimum standards has never been greater. If we can move on, please. Thank you. So my experience was that I've been very fortunate to have been able to visit Da Nang before and after the development of their first human milk bank in Vietnam, and to see the progress that was made there and the immense progress that's been made since then. And then I was also very privileged 2 years ago, to be able to visit the milk banks in Yangon, in Myanmar, the very long established milk bank and the newer milk bank there. But I was also hoping, just over a year ago, or 18 months ago, we can keep moving the slides on, thank you, to have been able to make some visits to more milk banks in this region. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 came upon us and put a stop to. Do please move the slides on. Thank you. So the COVID-19 happened, and so it became impossible to travel. but it didn't stop being able to make virtual visits to milk banks, and that's what I was able to do prior to and during the development of these standards. So if we can move on to how they were developed, this is what they were designed to do, to provide core recommendations to help with the development of protocols and activities that together comprise the minimum acceptable requirements for operating human milk banks throughout this region. And they will also form the basis upon which human milk banks in these countries could be accredited in the future, and on which any national legislations can be based and developed. So moving on, please. The main aim of them is to facilitate the further development of national, regional and local recommendations and guidelines, as well as operating procedures, to make sure that milk banks are not only safe and sustainable, but they provide donor human milk of optimum quality to the infants throughout the region. But I think also very, very important, and something that underpinned all of the discussions, was that the availability and the provision of donor human milk should always offer support, promotion and protection of breastfeeding, and never undermine maternal lactation and breastfeeding and the support for maternal lactation and breastfeeding. So that was the aim. If we move on to the next slide, please. The methodology that we used was to collate and compare all of the recommendations from the partner groups, together with the internationally published standards, guidelines, and also tools, not just from Southeast Asia, but from across Europe and North America. The available guidelines from Myanmar, from the Philippines, and from Vietnam formed the core source material. And of course, the evidence base for all the recommendations was considered throughout and has been referenced where it's available. So moving on, thank you. So as Dr. Starr described, the composition of the regional network in Southeast Asia, the technical working group is listed here. All of the countries listed there were represented, and so there was enormous expertise coming into the group from across the region. Carrying on, please. And the themes, one of the first things that had been done was that themes had been identified by the technical working group, and these were analysed throughout the available guidelines. This work was based on the recognition of the different themes and their inclusion in guidelines globally, again based on work done by PATH. But the decisions were taken by the technical working group on the structure of the minimum standards, and then additional relevant themes that could be included were agreed as well. Thank you. There were some challenges inevitably along the way. As anyone working in milk banking will know, there's different guidelines provide different recommendations. There are very different practices between different countries, and that's no different in the Southeast Asia, within the Southeast Asia network. So for example, exactly who the donors are differs. The donor screening requirements, including any serology testing, vary across regions and also across countries and within countries. Sometimes the safety and quality control of donor human milk, any testing, when to test milk, how often to test milk, for example, differs between guidelines. The use of hazard analysis critical control points as a quality assurance tool, whether or not to pool donor human milk, to pool milk from a single donor or to pool milk from a number of donors. The equipment that's used varies, and the clinical uses of donor human milk. So these are some of the main challenges that were worked through by the team. The first draft was developed using the defined structure that I mentioned earlier. It was able to provide recommendations to meet these requirements, and wherever possible, we use the wording from the available guidelines within the region. We highlighted where there wasn't a consensus. We invited comments via a questionnaire that all the technical working group members and their colleagues were able to complete. And then these were fully discussed at the country consultation meetings. We had a number of country consultation meetings throughout the process. We also explored the religious, cultural, and of course the many ethical considerations involved when developing minimum standards, particularly for such a geographically large, diverse region. Thank you. So moving on. As I said, there are various differences that were highlighted throughout this work, but at all times, what underpinned this was thinking about working with lactation support services and the role of the Human Milk Bank working alongside these. If we move on, thank you. So we had these regional multi-country consultations, and we can move on again, thank you. And we had a number of decisions to make. Lots of discussions about, so for example, the spatial requirements, some practical things like, can you accept breast milk storage bags, bigger issues about pooling, about testing, and about which tests to do, and so on. But these decisions were made, they've been approved by everybody and within the team, and now are there in these minimum standards being launched today. So if we can just go on, the consensus was achieved. We incorporated them into the final draft, agreed on the appendices, had a final consultation and final edits, and today here we are at the launch. So that's a very rapid run through the process. I'd be happy if we can just go on to my final slide to take comments and questions in the panel discussion. So thank you.
Thanks, Gillian. So the rolling out of this set of minimum standards is really a labor of love, I would say. So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Sheila Masangai, who is actually the auditor for the Human Milk Bank Association of the Philippines. And she will share with us just an outline of this set of minimum standards, as well as where you can obtain a copy. Dr. Sheila, please.
Good day, everyone. Thank you, May. And thank you, Gillian, likewise, for giving us a look back on the enjoyable meetings that we had and the details until we finally made these minimum standards. And my goal for today would be to present the final product. But first, allow me to refresh to you a few important facts about human milk. Human milk is the complete source of nourishment for infants because it contains all the essential macronutrients, micronutrients, and bioactive elements, which is for optimum growth and development. And the WHO likewise recommends that mothers should do exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months of life and start complementary foods at 6 months, while breastfeeding continues to 2 years and beyond. Also, human milk optimally supports gut development and digestion and the establishment of a healthy gut microbiome. And even among the very low birth weight infants, human milk is the gold standard for nourishment. WHO again recommends that infants who cannot be fed mother's own milk should be fed donor human milk. And human milk banks facilitate the safe sharing of breast milk from mothers who have extra milk to donate or to share. This background has already been stated, but let me tell you that more than 100 years ago, the first human milk bank was established in Europe and later on in North America. And to date, since 2020, there are over 750 human milk banks operating in at least 65 countries. In Southeast Asia, the first human milk bank was established in Yangon, Myanmar in 1994. In the Philippines, human milk banking was started in Philippine Children's Medical Center in 1996. And from 2008, sorry for the mistake there, Dr. Josefa Belia Hospital and PCMC likewise inaugurated new and complete facilities, followed by the Philippine General Hospital in 2009. Southeast Asian countries with corresponding number of human milk banks are, we have 27 in the Philippines, we have 5 in Vietnam, including 2 satellite banks. We have 5 in Thailand, 1 in Singapore, and Indonesia and Malaysia are currently establishing their milk banks. As Jillian stated, the minimum standards consist of core recommendations, protocols, and activities or services that need to be provided in compliance with nationally or internationally agreed guidelines. And through the demonstration of these adherence, the particular milk banks will pass safety inspection likewise. Standards are the minimum acceptable requirements for a number of human milk bank processes like donor recruitment and screening, milk collection, milk storage, milk handling, transportation, pasteurization, testing, and distribution to recipients. There are 2 sections in the minimum standards, and section 1 deals with development of the minimum standards. As Jillian mentioned, this was developed in collaboration with representatives of the 6 Southeast Asian countries: Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. And the technical working group composed of members from these 6 countries provided valuable inputs. With the expert guidance, I repeat, of Ms. Jillian Weaver, the International Milk Bank Specialist and Consultant, and with technical and financial assistance from Alive and Thrive. Section 1 likewise contained a human milk bank's operational principles. So it looks like it's a summary of the principles in operation of human milk bank. And number 1 is that the foundation of all human milk bank operations rests on support, promotion, and protection of breastfeeding, meaning breastfeeding and human milk banking are synergistic processes. Likewise, it contained importance of lactation support services, antenatally, postnatally. Processing fee may be collected to sustain operations, meaning milk is free. It is not given through coercion or there is no remuneration, but one has to pay processing fee to sustain operations. Minimum standards are to be followed by all human milk banks. All staff should be trained, including updates and refresher courses. All milk donation is voluntary, but written donor consent should be obtained. More principles: only dispense pasteurized donor milk with acceptable microbial culture results. The Holder pasteurization technique, which heats milk at 62.5 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes, followed by rapid cooling, is considered safe and optimal. Likewise, records management for donor and recipient should assure confidentiality and maintain privacy. Use of pasteurized donor human milk follows clinical indications. And also, there should be a reporting of any adverse event related to human milk bank operations to the hospital's risk management system. Dr. Star Husi mentioned the hazard analysis and critical control points principles, which are applied for quality control to be followed by staff and regularly reviewed in accordance with standards. The processes involved include donor recruitment and screening, collecting, storing, testing, processing, and transporting milk, personnel, required documentation, premises and equipment, including maintenance, batch recall, external and internal auditing, non-conformance to processes, self-inspection, and continuous quality improvement. So this is the area where we look at whatever risk we are getting into when operating or establishing a human milk bank. And the last operational principle refers to training all staff in HACCP for each human milk bank to develop its own HACCP plan to identify hazards and their critical control points, monitoring and management. Section 2 consists of the minimum standards itself. So we have three main headings. We have organization. So we have instructions on structure and staffing, staff training, all the essentials. Organization from facility until essential equipment that are necessary in establishing a milk bank. Next slide, please. Next, we go to the donors, who are the breast milk donors, prioritization of donor recruitment, until guidelines on COVID-19 and donor selection, donor physical exam, blood tests that you need to do as basic tests, until donor support after stopping donations. Next, we have, slide please. Faye, next slide please. Faye, next slide please. Dr. May, something's wrong with the slide projection.
Wait, ma'am.
Apologies for that technical glitch. We will now resume the presentation.
And the third section, so we talked about, it consists on guidelines on organization, guidelines on the donor, and likewise guidelines on, the third would be on donor human milk. In blue, Faye. The slides in blue, right? Okay, so with regards donor human milk, we are guided on collection and storage in hospital, in the donor's home, transportation of donor milk, receiving donor milk at the human milk bank. So what procedures do we follow? Processing, thawing, pooling, mixing, and pouring donor human milk. So this is the most detailed, the donor human milk. Next slide. Tracking and tracing pasteurized donor human milk, including recall. Likewise, when it is already pasteurized, tested, we already distribute to recipients. We have prioritization of recipients likewise. Next slide, please. And it also includes fortification of pasteurized donor human milk, home use, disposal, disaster and emergency response. And the last section is the appendices. The first one, making space for human milk banks, lessons learned from Vietnam. I think we will see a video on that later. Lactation support for mothers, donor consent form template. Fourth appendix would be the additional recommendations for safe collection and processing of donor human milk during COVID-19 pandemic. And the fifth appendix consists of human milk banks in Southeast Asia, minimum standards in promoting and reporting. So friends and colleagues, this is the minimum standards for the establishment and operation of human milk banks in Southeast Asia. So this is the front page, and it can be accessed through by scanning this.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila, for that comprehensive run through of the guidelines. And maybe we can put up the QR code for a little bit longer. So for those of you who are interested to get a copy of the minimum standards and to look through the document at your own time, you can scan this QR code and it will take you to the document. And for the next segment, we'd like to invite representatives from the regional network to join us for the Q&A discussion. I'm sure after listening to both Jillian and Dr. Sheila that you have some questions and that you'd like to clarify. And already in the chat, someone has typed in the first question. So may I first introduce the members of the panel? We have with us Dr. Supapan from Thailand. And joining us as well is Dr. Pambudi from Indonesia. And Dr. Sansan Min from Myanmar. And Dr. Tuan Nguyen Thi from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Hi. And Dr. Nguyen Thi Tupong from Da Nang Hospital. And of course, Ms. Jillian Weaver will join us on the panelists as well as one of the panelists, as well as Dr. Sheila. So to start the ball rolling, there's one question in the chat. So Claire is asking, how do healthcare providers in your area balance between giving skilled lactation support and engagements with the community for donations of breast milk? So maybe we can address this question to Dr. Sheila. Dr. Sheila, you're muted.
Sorry.
That's all right.
You mentioned about lactation support, right?
Balancing giving lactation support as well as engagement of the community for donations for breast milk.
We started a program way back in the late 90s where we involved the newly delivered mothers in the community. We lectured to them about the benefits of breastfeeding, the benefits of breast milk. And so we were able to get donors from that. The Philippine Children's Medical Center is essentially a pediatric hospital, but we have a perinatal center where high-risk mothers deliver. So we only have a few normal low-risk mothers who give birth to low-risk infants. So it seemed a difficult task for us to maintain a donor pool, but luckily we have maintained the donor pool. We stopped the community project for a while, especially now that we have the pandemic, but we have continuous donor pools from our staff, from previous donors, from friends likewise. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila. Yes, so indeed, I think the COVID-19 pandemic has caused huge disruptions in the way that we reach out and support mothers who have just, delivered, and in our outreach efforts to support them in terms of establishing breastfeeding. So in Singapore, we have actually set up a teleconsultation for mothers who run into problems with trying to establish their breastfeeding. And so we do provide that from the hospital. But essentially, I think it's very important for us, especially those who are working in the baby-friendly hospitals, to try to maintain the 10 steps to successful breastfeeding, so that when mothers leave the hospital, they're confident to be able to breastfeed exclusively. Now, there's a question on whether a mother who is breastfeeding a toddler can still be considered a donor, or is there a limit?
Oh,
Right. So can we have Dr. Supapan to, answer this question, whether in Thailand that you have any upper limits in terms of the age of the child where donations are allowed?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's a very honored to be here with you all. In Thailand, there are 5 human milk banks operating right now, and we do have the upper limit of the time after delivery. It's around 6 to 9 months after delivery for different human milk banks in Thailand.
Right. So 6 to 9 months is the upper limit. Then what about in Myanmar, Dr. San Min?
Yes, in Myanmar, the upper limit is under 12 months. So we never accept human milk from a mother with a toddler.
Thank you. So there are a number of questions on oh, yes. Yes, Gillian, please go ahead.
Can I just add a comment? Because I think it's important to recognise why we might have a limit. Is it because we consider that the milk of a mother who has an older baby is less desirable for the recipient babies, or is it from practical reasons? And my experience has been that it used to be very much based on the idea that the older the donor's own baby, the less suitable her milk was for particularly preterm newborns in hospital and so on. And there is some validity to that in terms of some of the micronutrients, but actually we're understanding now that the milk from mothers with older babies can contain more protein and more energy than the milk from mothers of younger babies. However, we also have to think of practicalities. When you are limited in terms of resources and staffing, a milk bank needs to be able to recruit those mothers who are able to give safe amounts of milk for them, but who are able to do it routinely and regularly, hopefully. And mothers with older babies often give less milk and less frequently because life takes over with a toddler. So it's balancing those two things, I think. It's very much up to individual milk banks and their own circumstances, or I think it should be, as to what sort of limits they adopt.
Thank you. There's a question about whether there are any milk banks in all 7 countries. So I think this question comes from Cambodia, that how many countries in ASEAN have established milk banks? I think that has been shared during the previous 2 talks, where in Philippines, in Thailand, in Vietnam, and in Singapore, and these are the countries, and also in Thailand, Myanmar, these are the countries where milk banks have been established. But the other countries like Indonesia, as well as Malaysia, these are definitely work in progress. So I think in the interest of time, we'll have to wrap up this session and move on to the next segment, where we will hear from some of the donors and recipients from some of the milk banks in the region. And we will hear from them what they have to say about their experience in receiving donor milk from the milk banks in their respective countries. So first up, we will have a video from Singapore. So thank you, Faye, for projecting the video. So the milk bank in Singapore is actually 4 years old, and we just celebrated our 4th anniversary earlier this month. So in the video, you will see that we have a recipient who is a Muslim, and you will hear from her how the milk bank gives
My baby girl, Shafana, was feeble. She was born 3 months early. To survive, she needed all the nutrients she could get. But 2 weeks after delivery, I couldn't even express enough milk for one feed. As a mother, I've experienced how upsetting it was to not be able to produce enough milk for my child, Khalid. Breast milk is especially important for premature babies. Their underdeveloped bodies digest breast milk better. Kalia. Breast milk is especially important for premature babies. Their underdeveloped bodies digest breast milk better than formula milk. I tried many ways to increase my milk supply. None worked. I was in despair, but the milk bank gave me hope. My milk supply eventually caught up. I even had excess milk stored at Talia's ward, so I decided to donate them to the milk bank. I took the necessary blood test to ensure I was an eligible donor. Many people around me were skeptical about us accepting milk from the milk bank. But I've already learned from Ace that it's not against our faith to do so. I wanted the best for Shafana, so I went for it. Today, Talia is a playful 1-year-old. She was once a recipient of donated breast milk too. I choose to share my milk so that no child will be deprived of this gift that gives life. I will never know who our donors were, but their generosity really touched our lives and will go a long way in helping other babies in need.ชื่อที่ผมนะคะเป็นน้องจีนนะคะตอนที่ท้องมีภาวะแทรกซ้อนเป็นความดันสูงอะค่ะแล้วก็ทำให้คลอดแบบกำหนดนะคะด้วยอายุครรภ์27 วีด้วยความที่ปอดเขายังพัฒนาไม่สมบูรณ์นะคะน้องผมก็ยังต้องใช้เครื่องช่วยหายใจมีภาวะตัวเหลืองค่ะแล้วก็ระบบดูดซึมค่อนข้างไม่ดีนะคะแล้วก็มีอาการท้องอืดคือเขาใครก็บอกว่าน้ำนมแม่นี่คือยาพิเศษบรรยากาศดีมากๆเลยที่แบบได้น้ำนมแม่เพราะว่าน้องจริงๆขอมาซึ่งตัวเหลืองเนาะซึ่งน้ำนมแม่เนี่ยทำให้ภาวะตัวเหลืองเนี่ยดีขึ้นพอได้น้ำนมแม่เข้าไปเนี่ยให้ระบบดูดซึมน้องค่อนข้างดีเลยก็อยากจะเชิญชวนคุณแม่ทุกท่านนะคะที่มีน้ำนมมากเพียงพอค่ะอยากจะให้มาร่วมบริจาคน้ำนมแม่นะคะเพื่อเด็กคลอดแบบกำหนดแล้วก็เด็กที่เป็นผู้ป่วยซึ่งอย่างที่บอกคือน้ำนมแม่นี่คือเป็นสิ่งมหัศจรรย์มากที่สามารถต่อชีวิตให้กับเด็กที่มีภาวะอย่างเนี้ยได้ดีได้เยอะด้วยค่ะสวัสดีค่ะชื่อแม่ขวัญนะคะก็ส่วนคนที่สองเนี่ยก็ให้ตั้งแต่วันแรกเลยค่ะพอมีคนที่สองน้ำนมเราเยอะกว่าคนแรกอีกมองเห็นว่าบริจาคให้ทางธนาคารนมแม่นะคะคือเราไปให้เด็กที่เจ็บป่วยหรือว่าเด็กที่จำเป็นต้องใช้น้ำนมแม่กับแม่ที่ต้องการบริจาคน้ำนมนะคะก็แนะนำให้ติดต่อมากับทางธนาคารนมแม่ได้นะคะถ้าเกิดของที่ศรีราชหรือที่อื่นๆที่มีธนาคารแต่ว่าการบริจาคนะคะแนะนำให้คุณแม่เก็บน้ำนมให้สะอาดที่สุดเท่าที่เราจะทำได้นะคะเพื่อที่เวลาหมอพยาบาลเอาไปใช้เนี่ยจะได้เกิดประโยชน์สูง
Anh Phú đã từng rất lo lắng khi hai bé trai sinh đôi nhà anh mới 33 tuần tuổi đã chào đời với cân nặng lần lượt là 1,5 và 2 kg. Giờ đây, dù chỉ có hai bố con anh ở lại chăm nhau vì vợ và cậu con lớn đã được xuất viện, thì nỗi lo đó cũng đã vơi bớt phần nào. Cậu em nhờ nguồn sữa của ngân hàng sữa mẹ suốt hơn 1 tháng qua mà sức khỏe đã cải thiện rõ rệt.
Nó lúc đầu sinh con nó biết là cháu có khỏe mạnh hay không á. Thì nó biết là không có đủ sữa để nuôi thì lấy cho qua sữa để nuôi cháu. Bây giờ thì yên tâm hơn, là cháu thấy cháu nó tăng cân, mà bạn này sinh ra được 1,6 cân, nên bây giờ lên được là 670 gram, 2 cân 270. Cứng cáp hơn thì cũng yên tâm hơn.
Nguồn sữa thanh trùng mà khoảng hơn 80 trẻ đang điều trị tại Viện Sản Nhi Quảng Ninh được hưởng hàng ngày đến từ những bà mẹ như Huyền Trang. Mỗi tuần một lần, nhân viên của ngân hàng sữa mẹ lại đến tận nhà chị để thu gom sữa mẹ đã được cấp đông theo đúng tiêu chuẩn.
Tại vì hôm đầu em mới này em chưa có sữa, thế là không có sữa thì con em nó bú mà không ngủ ấy, nó không ăn được, thì đâu có sữa nó khóc thân thương hết. Mình cảm thấy là mình bất lực lắm. Bác sĩ y tá bảo là ra ngân hàng sữa bệnh viện xin, thì bà ngoại cháu đi xin sữa thì về cháu ăn. Lúc em mới cảm thấy rằng là con mình không có sữa đã khổ thân như thế rồi ấy. Thế khi các bạn khác không có sữa cũng rất là tội, thế là mình không có sữa mình cấp cho bệnh viện thôi.
Chị Trang là một trong gần 20 bà mẹ đều đặn hiến sữa cho ngân hàng sữa mẹ. Những bà mẹ này đã được khám sàng lọc, tránh các bệnh lý có thể lây nhiễm qua đường sữa mẹ như viêm gan B, C, nhiễm HIV hay bệnh giang mai, và kiểm tra để đảm bảo không sử dụng bất cứ chất kích thích nào. Một điểm quan trọng không kém để chất lượng sữa mẹ thanh trùng luôn được đảm bảo, còn nhờ những quy trình kiểm soát sữa chặt chẽ và cẩn trọng.
Tại ngân hàng sữa mẹ thì các cái dụng cụ trang thiết bị ở đây cũng như là các cái đồ mình gửi cho bệnh nhân để trữ sữa ở cộng đồng đều được vệ sinh, được khử khuẩn. Mình có định kỳ là mình cấy các cái xét nghiệm vi sinh để tìm các cái vi khuẩn. Thứ nhất là tại cái hệ thống tủ đông, thứ hai là xét nghiệm vi sinh ở trong chính những cái dụng cụ mình phát cho bà mẹ, thứ ba là xét nghiệm cái vi sinh trong nguồn sữa đó. Ngoài ra mình có xét nghiệm đột xuất khi mà mình thấy có những cái vấn đề mà cần phải xem xét lại.
Sau khi được thanh trùng trong 30 phút, sữa mẹ sẽ được làm lạnh nhanh xuống 4 độ và tiếp tục được xét nghiệm thêm lần nữa. Nếu đạt yêu cầu mới cấp đông để đến khi cần sử dụng cho các em bé. Nhiều nghiên cứu khoa học đã cho thấy trẻ sinh non được nuôi dưỡng bằng sữa mẹ thanh trùng có khả năng dung nạp tốt hơn, ít nôn ứ sữa và giảm tiêu chảy so với trẻ nuôi bằng sữa công thức. Việc sử dụng sữa mẹ thanh trùng làm giảm 19% nguy cơ nhiễm trùng sơ sinh muộn ở nhóm trẻ dễ bị tổn thương và giảm nuôi dưỡng bằng tĩnh mạch 10 ngày.
Greetings. Me and my wife have been married for 11 years. It took us 8 years to finally achieve a successful pregnancy with our daughter, Maya. It turned out that my wife had multiple maternal complications, which included APAS, a cervical polyp, and severe preeclampsia. Our pregnancy lasted for 32 weeks and 6 days and ended with an emergency cesarean section due to complications from severe preeclampsia. So you would be right if you thought that we really had a rough course. Maya was born preterm with very low birth weight of only 1.3 kilograms. And because of that, we spent 5 weeks in the neonatal ICU. All of these did not do any good for my wife's breast milk production. She was able to produce some, but far from enough to satisfy the requirements of our daughter, who clearly needed a lot of support from breastfeeding. This is where our journey with Dr. Estrella Husi and Fabella Hospital Human Milk Bank started. I went to Dr. Husi feeling very anxious. I was told that there was not enough milk for all the babies who needed it. And indeed, there wasn't. I remember following the line at the milk bank, hearing all the stressful pregnancy stories similar to ours. I could definitely relate to all of them. Everybody in line was a parent, a father, a mother, a grandparent, and even a friend helping a friend, all of whom dreamt of being able to provide everything to their newborn, but sadly fell short and wanted to do anything and everything to be able to help. I came to realize that I was not alone and there were a lot of others like us. I have nothing but admiration for Dr. Husey and her team for providing us with something that we all prayed for, hope. I have nothing but love for all the mothers who took their time and effort to donate their breast milk. If only I could give all of them a hug for my daughter. After several weeks and months, it felt like family already, since they would always show their concern for my daughter, who was already catching up at the time. In addition, they gave me the confidence and strength which I needed to be able to fulfill my purpose as a father who provided what is needed for his daughter to grow with happiness and health. Since I made that journey with Dr. Husey, I made it a point that me, my wife, and especially our daughter would be forever grateful to the people who made it possible to achieve our dreams. Maya, my daughter, today is 2.5 years old already, and she already wants to be a doctor when she grows up. And indeed, she will be in the future. The future looks bright. Thank you, Dr. Husey.
Hello, good afternoon. Wonderful day, everyone. I am Garcia from Quezon City, Philippines, 38 years old, and a mom for 1-year-old and 7 months baby Micaela Jean T. Garcia. As a first-time mom, my main goal is really to give her the best, everything best that I can to give. And one of those that I believe in my heart is really to give her the best milk, which is really my breast milk. I'm really so determined to breastfeed her for her overall health. And it's really so painful, but it's really I really enjoy that. But with God's grace and with God's guidance, I'm able to exclusively breastfeed her until now. It's really so amazing. The connection is really good. It's really so fulfilling. And because of this, the everyday habit that I have, my milk production increases a lot. And it's really so great to share to all of you that last July 2020, I have been able to donate more than 70 bags of milk, breast milk, to Human Milk Bank of the Philippines. And the feeling is so wonderful, the feeling is so amazing, and I'm really so grateful. I really can't imagine that I can do it, but I'm also very thankful to this agency, the Human Milk Bank of the Philippines, because they had given me all the guidance, the teachings, the learnings to guide me to how to handle those precious milk that I have to reach to those precious babies in the hospital.
In Cambodia.
Thank you so much. I'm really so happy to be with you and really so happy to share this wonderful opportunity to be with you this afternoon. Take care. God bless everyone. God bless
all 7 countries.
Always. Thanks.
In your countries.
Hello.
Yes. Many thanks for opportunity to learn.
Well, you can see from these videos that families are really appreciative of the milk banks in their respective countries. So to have one's pregnancy ending in a premature birth is really stressful for any family, and even more so when the mother is ill and not able to provide this life-saving human milk. So we'd like to take this opportunity to really thank all our silent heroes, the donors, for their passion, their dedication, and their commitment to this cause, without which the milk bank will not be able to do the work that it has set out to do. And so we have come actually to the end of the program. So to wrap up today's program, I'd like to invite Dr. Paul Zambrano, who is the Regional Technical Advisor from Alive and Thrive Southeast Asia, to deliver the closing remarks. Dr. Paul, please.
Hi, everyone. Before I give my very quick closing remarks, I just want to make a very, very quick announcement that in addition to the QR code We will be making the document available and downloadable from the Alive and Thrive website. So please stay tuned for that. We will send you a link later on. So so stay tuned and we'll be in touch. So to end this session, I just want to give a message of thanks to everyone involved in this initiative and presumably the people who will be involved in the next chapter of this work. So thank you to the Human Milk Bank Association of the Philippines for their flexibility, their dedication, and their resilience in pursuing this work until the end. Thank you to Jillian, reaching out her hand from halfway around the world to provide her expertise, her time, and also her infectious passion for human milk banks. I'd like to say thank you to the members of the regional network for being tireless in their effort to provide their insights, to share their experience and best practices that help shape these guidelines are. Thank you to the Human Milk Bankers and colleagues in the countries in Southeast Asia, to the members of the Global Alliance of Milk Bank Associations, our development partners in UNICEF and WHO for their support, as well as to the donors who have in the past supported the establishment of human milk banks. So they are instrumental collectively in not just establishing the banks themselves, but also establishing models and best practices that help to shape these regional guidelines. So as Jillian and our other panelists said, this document feels like we've been working on it for such a long time, but sometimes it also feels like it was only yesterday that we started. You know? But all the same, I think it nonetheless represents our hard work, the passion of all involved to establish this life-saving specialized service for infants who are at risk of falling furthest behind at the time they need it and for as long as they need it. This is an intervention very much aligned with our collective agenda for small and sick babies, whether it's reducing the risk of death and illness, improving short and long-term nutrition, and even nurturing care. And of course, this is very much aligned with our agenda to protect, promote, and support breastfeeding. We hope that this is the start and not the end of our efforts to scale up the coverage of this intervention in the region, and that together we move forward, supporting each other to address our common regional challenges. Alive and Thrive is honored to be part of this work and the next chapter, whatever that may be, and we invite countries who do not yet have a human milk bank but are considering establishing human milk banks to connect with us and the regional human milk bank network so we can provide you guidance early on in the same way that other countries provided support and guidance to us in a collaborative manner. So we move forward together. And I will end by paying a quick tribute and heartfelt thanks to all the donor mothers who provide and their supportive families who have shared their breast milk and their love to the babies most in need. And that's it for me. Back to you, Dr. May, and thank you to everyone for sharing your time with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. So to capture this milestone in the regional human milk network, human milk bank network of Southeast Asia, we'd like to take a photograph to commemorate this event. So can I invite you to turn on your video, your camera, and to give us your best smile so that we can capture this very special moment.
So 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so thank you everyone for taking time to join us today. So till we meet again, stay safe and keep healthy. And we will keep in touch, and remember to download a copy of the guidelines from the regional from Alive and Thrive, the web page, and the QR code will also be provided for you for easy reference. Thank you very much. Take care and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, May.